The massive chamber fell silent as Admiral Zethkara raised her blue-scaled hand. Around the circular table sat representatives from dozens of alien species, each one looking more worried than the last. The Galactic Council had called this emergency meeting for one reason. Someone needed to handle the situation in the void sector, and so far nobody wanted the job. Admiral Zethkara's voice echoed through the chamber as she spoke. Her tentacles moved nervously as she explained the problem. Deep in space, far from any inhabited world, an ancient structure had started sending out a distress signal. This was not just any structure. It was built by the predecessors, the mysterious race that had vanished millions of years ago. The structure was huge, bigger than most moons. It looked like some kind of research station, covered in strange metal that seemed to shift and change in the light. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the deadly radiation field surrounding it. This radiation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It could cook a ship in seconds, melt through the strongest armor, and kill any living thing that got too close. 3 unmanned probe ships had already tried to get close to the structure. All 3 had been destroyed instantly. The radiation tore them apart like paper. But somehow the distress signal kept coming from inside the station. Someone or something was still alive in there, and they were running out of time. The Zephyrians were the first to speak. Their leader, a tall gray being with large black eyes, stood up slowly. "Our computers have run every possible calculation," he said in his quiet voice. "The chance of success is less than 1%. We cannot risk our people on such a mission." The Cybernetic Nexus Collective came next. Their representative looked like a walking computer, with wires and lights covering half of its face. "Our quantum processors have analyzed all scenarios," it announced in a mechanical voice. "No viable solution exists. The mission parameters exceed all safety protocols." One by one, each species gave their reasons for backing out. The Korthak, famous throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors, declared the mission honorable but pointless. The peaceful Altarians said it would be tragic waste of life. Even the brave Stellar Rangers, who had fought in every major war for the past 1,000 years, shook their heads and said it could not be done. In the far corner of the chamber, at a small table that most species barely noticed, sat the human delegation. Captain Sarah Chen listened to each excuse with growing frustration. Her brown eyes grew darker with each refusal. Next to her, Dr. James Okafor took notes on his tablet, while Commander Lisa Torres drummed her fingers on the table. The humans had been part of the Galactic Council for only 50 years. Most of the older species still thought of them as newcomers, interesting but not very important. After all, humans had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. What could they possibly know about handling an ancient alien artifact? Admiral Zethkara looked around the chamber one more time. Her voice carried sadness as she spoke. "If no one will take this mission, we must accept that whoever is sending that distress signal will die. The station's power systems are failing. Our best estimates give them perhaps a week before everything shuts down." That was when Captain Chen stood up. She was not very tall, and her simple blue uniform looked plain next to the fancy clothes worn by the other delegates. But something in her voice made the entire chamber turn to look at her. "We'll handle it," she said. The reaction was immediate. Delegates started talking all at once, their voices mixing into a chaos of different languages. Some species chittered with worry, others beeped electronic warnings, and a few roared in what sounded like protest. Admiral Zethkara raised her hand for silence. When the chamber grew quiet, she looked directly at Captain Chen. "Captain, with all respect to your species, you have been in space for only 2 centuries. This challenge has defeated civilizations that have traveled the stars for millions of years." Captain Chen smiled, and there was something sharp about that smile that made several aliens take a step back. "Maybe that's exactly why we're the right choice for this job." Dr. Okafor stood up next to her, his dark face serious but determined. "We've looked at the data, Admiral. Everyone else is trying to solve this like it's a normal rescue mission. But it's not normal, is it? Normal solutions don't work here." Commander Torres joined them, her hands resting on her belt. "Other species see an impossible problem and walk away. Humans see an impossible problem and ask, how do we make it possible? The Zephyrian delegate's large eyes grew even wider. But the radiation field alone would destroy any ship before it could reach the station. Your technology cannot handle such forces. Our technology? Captain Chen laughed, and the sound was not entirely pleasant. Who said anything about relying only on our technology? We've got something better than the most advanced computers or the strongest armor. What could possibly be better? Asked the Nexus Collective representative. Stubbornness, Chen replied, and the willingness to try things that everyone else says won't work. Admiral Zethkara's tentacles writhed with worry. Captain Chen, I admire your courage, but courage alone will not protect you from that radiation. It will not solve the technical problems. It will not bring back the lives that will surely be lost. Captain Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate who would look back at her. You're right, Admiral. Courage alone won't be enough. But courage plus human stubbornness, plus our habit of ignoring the rules when they get in our way, that might just do it. Dr. Okafor pulled out his tablet and showed some numbers to the chamber. We've been studying the radiation patterns. Everyone else sees random deadly energy. We see a pattern. Patterns can be predicted. Predictions can be used. The radiation pulses, Commander Torres added, like a heartbeat but made of death. If we can time it right, if we can move fast enough, we might be able to slip through when it's weakest. The chamber erupted in debate again. Some species called the humans crazy. Others said they were brave but doomed. A few whispered that maybe, just maybe, the humans might actually have a chance. Admiral Zethkara finally called for order. The Council cannot officially support such a dangerous mission, but we will not stop you from trying. She paused, her voice growing softer. How long do you need to prepare? Captain Chen looked at her team, then back at the Admiral. Give us 3 days to get our ships ready. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it fast, before the situation gets any worse. And if you fail? Asked the Altarian delegate. Then at least someone tried, Chen replied. At least someone didn't just sit around calculating odds while people died. As the meeting ended and the delegates began to file out, many of them shook, their heads sadly. The humans were brave, they agreed, but bravery was not enough. This mission was suicide, plain and simple. But Captain Chen felt differently as she watched the aliens leave. She had seen that look before, the look that said something was impossible. Humans had been getting that look for their entire history. And humans had been proving it wrong just as long. 3 days later, the human fleet would launch toward the void sector. Behind them, they would leave a galaxy holding its breath. Ahead of them lay the most dangerous rescue mission anyone had ever attempted. The humans wouldn't have it any other way. 3 days later, the human rescue fleet approached the deadly radiation field surrounding the predecessor station. The fleet looked nothing like what other species would send on such an important mission. Instead of sleek warships or advanced science vessels, the humans had brought what looked like a collection of workboats and mining equipment. The lead ship was called the Indomitable, and it had started life as an asteroid mining vessel. It was big, ugly, and built to survive in the harshest conditions space could offer. Captain Chen had chosen it because it was tough, not because it was pretty. Behind it flew 2 smaller ships packed with medical supplies, tools, and equipment that other species would politely call junk. Dr. James Okafor stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the readings on his screen. While other species had tried to build better shields to block the radiation, the humans had taken a completely different approach. They had studied the deadly energy field for 3 straight days, and they had found something everyone else had missed. It's like a lighthouse, Dr. Okafor explained to the crew gathered around him. The radiation sweeps around in a pattern. It gets stronger, then weaker, then stronger again. If we time it just right, we can slip through when it's at its weakest point. Commander Lisa Torres, who would be piloting the first ship through the field, studied the timing charts. So we're basically playing jump rope with death rays? That's one way to put it. Dr. Okafor smiled. Except if we miss our timing, we all die horribly. No pressure then. Torres replied with a grin that showed she was not worried at all. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb had spent the last 72 hours working non-stop to prepare their ships. He had taken apart alien technology, human equipment, and anything else he could find, then put it all back together in ways that would make most engineers cry. Their radiation shields were a crazy mix of different parts held together with metal tape, determination, and hope. "Will it work?" Captain Chen asked him. Webb wiped grease from his hands and shrugged. "Probably, and if it doesn't work, we'll figure out something else while we're getting cooked." The alien observer ships had positioned themselves what they thought was a safe distance away, about 3 solar systems back. From there, they watched through long-range sensors as the human fleet began its approach. The radiation readings were so high that most alien computers refused to display them, showing only error messages. Admiral Zethkara watched from her command ship, her tentacles twisted with worry. "Are the humans certain about their calculations?" she asked her science officer. "No, Admiral," came the reply. "Their computers show a 30% chance of success, but the human Captain Chen told our observer that odds are for people who don't want something badly enough." The human fleet moved closer to the radiation field, their ships looking tiny against the massive energy barrier. The radiation pulsed like a giant heartbeat, growing brighter and dimmer in a rhythm that had been going for thousands of years. "Timing, mark in 30 seconds, Commander Torres announced over the radio. "All ships prepare for entry." Dr. Okafor watched his instruments carefully. The radiation levels were dropping as the pulse cycle reached its lowest point. "Now!" he called out. The Indomitable shot forward like a bullet, followed by the 2 smaller ships. They raced through space at maximum speed, trying to reach the station before the radiation pulse grew strong again. Their jury-rigged shields sparked and smoked as the energy hit them, but they held together. "Shields holding at 60%, Webb reported, his voice tight with concentration. "Radiation levels climbing fast." "How much farther?" Torres asked, her hands flying over the controls as she pushed the ship harder. 2 more minutes to the station," Dr. Okafor replied. "Radiation pulse will peak in 90 seconds. The race was on. The human ships flew through the deadly field as the radiation grew stronger around them. Their shields began to fail, sparks flying from control panels as the energy overloaded their systems. But they kept going, refusing to slow down even as their equipment caught fire. "Hull temperature rising," Webb called out. "We're starting to cook." "Shields down to 20%, Dr. Okafor added. Captain Chen gripped her chair as the ship shook around them. Through the view screen, she could see the predecessor station growing larger. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, covered in metal that seemed to move and shift like it was alive. "There!" Torres shouted. "I can see the docking bay." The Indomitable shot through the station's shields just as their own protection finally failed completely. Behind them, the 2 smaller ships followed, their hulls glowing red-hot from the radiation. They crashed into the docking bay with all the grace of a controlled explosion, but they made it. The alien observers, watching from their safe distance, could hardly believe what they had seen. The humans had done something that every computer had said was impossible. They had flown through a radiation field that should have killed them instantly. "How?" Admiral Zethkara whispered, staring at her instruments. Her science officer checked the readings 3 times before answering. They ignored the parts of the physics they couldn't change and focused on the parts they could work with. Also, their ship's engine output was 30% higher than safety specifications allow. They overloaded their engines? By a lot. "Admiral, if something had gone wrong, the explosion would have been visible from here." Inside the station, the human crew was picking themselves up and checking for injuries. The docking bay was dark except for emergency lights, and the air tasted stale and old, but they were alive and they were inside. Captain Chen activated her radio. "This is Chen to all alien observers. We made it through the radiation field. The station appears stable for now." "How?" came Admiral Zethkara's voice, still sounding shocked. "We did what humans do best," Chen replied, looking around at her battered but determined crew. "We took a problem everyone said was impossible and made it possible through sheer stubbornness." Dr. Okafor was already scanning the station's interior with his instruments. Captain, I'm picking up life signs. Faint, but definitely there. The distress signal is coming from deep inside the station. How deep? Torres asked. About 20 levels down, through what looks like a maze of corridors that don't make any sense. Webb laughed as he checked his equipment. Good thing we brought plenty of cutting tools. If we can't figure out how to open their doors, we'll just make our own. Captain Chen smiled as she looked at her team. Other species would spend months studying the station's layout, trying to understand its alien technology before making a move. The humans were going to grab their tools and start cutting through walls. All right, people, she announced. We came here to save lives. Let's get to work. The real mission was just beginning. The inside of the predecessor station was like nothing the humans had ever seen. The corridors twisted and turned in ways that hurt to look at, as if someone had taken normal hallways and folded them through dimensions that should not exist. The walls were made of a dark metal that seemed to shift and flow when nobody was looking directly at it. This place makes my head hurt, Commander Torres muttered as she checked her compass for the third time. The needle was spinning wildly, pointing in different directions every few seconds. Dr. Okafor was taking readings with every instrument he had brought. The gravity keeps changing too. 1 minute we're walking normally, the next minute we're practically floating. It's like the station doesn't know which way is up. Captain Chen studied the map they had tried to make of the station's layout. It looked like a child's drawing of spaghetti. The distress signal is still coming from the center of this maze. We need to split up to cover more ground. She divided her team into 3 groups. Team Alpha would be led by herself, taking the most direct route toward the signal. They would push straight through whatever obstacles they found, using military tactics and sheer determination to break through. Team Beta would follow Dr. Okafor, taking a more careful approach. They would try to understand how the alien technology worked and use that knowledge to find a safer path through the station. Team Gamma would go with Engineer Webb, who had brought enough explosives to level a small building. If the station's design was too confusing to navigate normally, Webb planned to simply make a more direct route. Stay in radio contact, Captain Chen ordered. If one team gets in trouble, the others will come help. And remember, we're not here to study this place or steal their technology. We're here to save lives. Team Alpha moved out first, following what looked like the main corridor toward the station's center. The hallway was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side, but the ceiling kept changing height. Sometimes they could stand up straight. Other times they had to crawl on their hands and knees. Door ahead, reported Sergeant Martinez, the team scout. Looks like it's sealed shut. Captain Chen examined the door. It was made of the same flowing metal as the walls, with no visible handle or control panel. Strange symbols covered its surface, shifting and changing even as she watched. Can you figure out how to open it? She asked. Martinez tried pressing. Different symbols, but nothing happened. No luck, Captain. Want me to try cutting through it? Do it. Martinez pulled out his plasma cutter and went to work. The tool was designed to slice through the hull of a spaceship, but the alien metal resisted it stubbornly. After 10 minutes of cutting, he had only managed to make a small hole. This is going to take forever, he complained. Captain Chen thought for a moment, then smiled. Step back. She pulled out her sidearm and shot the door 3 times. The energy bolts hit the strange symbols, causing them to flicker and fade. With a soft hiss, the door slid open. Sometimes the direct approach works best, she said. Meanwhile, Team Beta was having their own adventures. Dr. Okafor had found what looked like a control panel covered in crystals that glowed with soft blue light. Instead of trying to understand what each crystal did, he had connected his tablet computer to the panel using jury-rigged cables. This shouldn't work, muttered Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's alien technology specialist. Our computer systems are completely different from theirs. You're right, it shouldn't work, Dr. Okafor agreed as his tablet screen filled with strange data. But it is working, and that's what matters. He had managed to access some kind of station map, though it looked more like abstract art than a useful diagram. I think this shows us where the life signs are coming from. It's definitely in the central section, but there are about 50 different ways to get there. Which way is fastest? asked Technician Roberts. That's the problem. I don't think fastest applies here. The corridors seem to change their layout every few hours. The route that looks shortest might become the longest by the time we get halfway there. Dr. Kim had an idea. What if we're thinking about this wrong? What if the station isn't broken? What if it's supposed to work this way? You mean the changing layout is intentional? Think about it. This was a research station. Maybe they were studying something dangerous, something they didn't want to escape. A maze that constantly changes would be perfect security. Dr. Okafor nodded slowly. So instead of fighting the maze, we work with it. We find a path that's open right now and move fast before it changes. Team Gamma had decided to ignore the station's layout entirely. Engineer Webb looked at the maze of corridors and made a simple decision. He would go through the walls instead of around them. The life signs are coming from that direction, he told his team, pointing straight ahead. So that's the direction we're going. But there's a wall in the way, pointed out Specialist Chen. Not for long there isn't, Webb replied, setting up his first shaped charge. The explosion echoed through the station, shaking the metal walls and causing the lights to flicker. When the smoke cleared, there was a neat hole in the wall just big enough for a person to walk through. See? Sometimes the best path is the one you make yourself. Webb's team moved through the hole into the next chamber, which turned out to be some kind of laboratory. Strange equipment lined the walls, humming with alien energy. In the center of the room stood a pillar made of the same flowing metal as the rest of the station, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. Should we try to study this stuff? Asked Specialist Chen. Nope, Webb replied, setting up another charge. We're not here to play scientist. We're here to rescue people. The second explosion opened a path into the next chamber, and the next, and the next. Webb's team cut a straight line through the station, ignoring the alien technology and focusing only on their goal. Back in the command center of the observer ships, Admiral Zethkara was watching the humans' progress with a mixture of admiration and horror. They're destroying priceless artifacts, complained the Altarian science officer. That station contains technology beyond our understanding. And they're ignoring safety protocols, added the Nexus collective representative. Those explosions could destabilize the entire structure. Admiral Zethkara's tentacles writhed thoughtfully. Yes, they are doing all of those things. But they are also getting closer to the survivors, faster than any of our careful plans would have managed. On her screen, she could see the 3 human teams approaching the station's center from different directions. Team Alpha had shot, cut, and bulldozed their way through a dozen obstacles. Team Beta had somehow convinced the alien computer systems to work with human technology. Team Gamma had simply blown up everything in their path. Admiral, her communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from Captain Chen. Put it through. Captain Chen's voice came over the speakers, slightly out of breath but determined. Admiral, we've found them. 3 predecessor. Survivors in some kind of sleeping chambers. They're alive but barely. Their life support is failing fast. How long do they have? Maybe 6 hours before the chambers stop working completely. And that's the good news. What's the bad news? The bad news is that we have no idea how their technology works. If we try to move them without understanding the sleeping chambers, we'll probably kill them. Can you figure out how the chambers work in 6 hours? There was a pause, then Webb's voice joined the conversation. Maybe. Or maybe we build our own life support around theirs. It won't be pretty, but it might work. Admiral Zethkara felt her heart skip a beat. You want to build human technology around predecessor equipment? Why not? Came Dr. Okafor's voice. We've been doing crazy things all day. Why stop now? The humans had found the survivors. Now came the hard part, keeping them alive long enough to get them out of the station. And they had less than 6 hours to figure out how to do it. The chamber at the heart of the predecessor station was unlike anything the humans had seen before. It was perfectly round, with walls that seemed to be made of solid light. In the center stood 3 cylindrical pods, each one containing a sleeping figure that looked almost human but definitely was not. The predecessors were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and faces that seemed too perfect to be real. They floated in some kind of glowing liquid, connected to their pods by tubes and wires that pulsed with soft energy. The pods themselves were works of art, covered in flowing patterns that moved and changed like living things. "How long have they been sleeping?" Dr. Okafor asked, checking his instruments. "According to the station's computer, about 10,000 years, replied Dr. Kim, who had managed to interface her tablet with the alien systems. "But the pods are designed to keep them alive much longer than that." "So what went wrong, Captain?" Chen asked. "The station's main power source is failing," Dr. Okafor explained, pointing to readings on his screen. "These pods need constant energy to keep working. When the power goes out completely, the predecessors will die." Engineer Webb was already examining the pods, trying to understand how they worked. "This is like trying to fix a watch while wearing boxing gloves," he muttered. "I can see that it's amazing technology, but I have no idea what any of it does." The pods were connected to the station's power grid through crystalline conduits that carried energy in ways that human science barely understood. The crystals hummed with power, but some of them were cracking and their light was growing dimmer. "How much time do we have?" Torres asked. "The pods will fail completely in about 5 hours, Dr. Kim reported. "Maybe less if the power fluctuations get worse." Webb studied the failing crystals, then looked at the human equipment they had brought with them. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We can't fix their technology, but we can build our own around it." What do you mean?" Captain Chen asked. "I mean, we treat this like a mining accident. When the mine's life support fails, you don't try to fix the mine. You bring in your own air and power and keep people alive until you can get them out." Webb started pulling equipment from his pack: portable power cells, medical monitors, life support units designed for emergency use. They were crude compared to the elegant predecessor technology, but they worked. "We wrap our life support systems around their pods," he explained. "When their power fails, our equipment takes over. It won't be as good as what they have now, but it should keep them alive long enough to get them out of here." Dr. Okafor looked worried. "But we don't know how their biology works. What if our life support isn't compatible with their needs?" "Then we learn fast," Webb replied, already connecting cables to the nearest pod. "Or we improvise something that works well enough." The team worked frantically to understand the predecessor pods while building human backup systems around them. Dr. Kim tried to decode the alien medical readouts, comparing them to human vital signs to figure out what was normal for a predecessor. "Their heart rate is much slower than ours," she reported. "But their brain activity is incredibly complex. It's like they're dreaming in mathematical equations." Dr. Okafor was monitoring the power flow to the pods. "The energy requirements are enormous. These pods use more power than our entire ship. That's why we're not trying to replace their systems," Webb explained as he worked. "We're just building a bridge to keep them alive during the transition." Meanwhile, Captain Chen was dealing with a new problem. The station's structure was becoming unstable. The power failures were causing cascading system breakdowns throughout the facility. "Chen to all team," she announced over the radio. "We have a bigger problem. The station's core is starting to collapse. The whole place is coming apart." "How long before total collapse?" asked Torres. Chen checked the readings on her scanner. "Maybe 3 hours. The gravity generators are failing and the structural supports are starting to buckle. So we need to move the predecessors in 3 hours, but their life support won't be ready for 5 hours?" Webb asked. "That's about the size of it." Webb looked at the half-built life support system surrounding the nearest pod, then at his teammates. "Well, that's a problem for 3 hours from now. Let's focus on the problems we can solve right now." The team pushed harder, working to complete their improvised life support system. They connected human medical monitors to alien power conduits, jury-rigged atmospheric processors to maintain the pod's environment, and built backup power systems. From spare parts and determination, "This shouldn't work," Dr. Kim muttered as she watched human technology interface with predecessor systems. "Our equipment is like stone tools compared to theirs." "But it is working," Dr. Okafor pointed out. "Look at the readings. Our monitors are tracking their vital signs perfectly." The reason it worked, Webb realized, was because they were not trying to understand the alien technology. They were simply working around it, building a crude but functional layer of human engineering on top of the sophisticated predecessor systems. It's like performing surgery with a wrench, he told Captain Chen. Not pretty, but effective. 2 hours into their work, disaster struck. One of the main power crystals cracked completely, and the nearest pod's life support began to fail. Alarms started sounding, and the predecessor inside began to show signs of distress. His vital signs are dropping fast, Dr. Kim reported. The pod's medical systems are shutting down. Switch to our backup system, Webb ordered. But it's not ready yet. It's ready enough. Do it now. Dr. Okafor activated the human life support system they had built around the failing pod. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then their medical monitors started showing stable readings, and the predecessor's vital signs began to improve. Worked, Dr. Kim said in amazement. Our primitive life support is actually keeping him alive. Don't sound so surprised, Webb grinned. Human engineering might not be pretty, but it gets the job done. But their celebration was short-lived. The station shook violently as another system failed, and Captain Chen's radio crackled with bad news. Chen, this is Torres on the ship. The radiation field outside is getting stronger. Our exit window is shrinking fast. How much time do we have? Maybe 30 minutes before the radiation becomes completely impassable. After that, we're stuck here until it cycles down again. And how long would that take? About 6 hours. But the station will have collapsed by then. Captain Chen looked at the 3 predecessor pods, only one of which was connected to human life support. They needed at least another hour to prepare the other 2 pods for transport. So we need an hour of work, but we only have 30 minutes to get out of here, she said. Webb wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. Well, Captain, looks like we're going to have to do something stupid. Such as? We take them out now, ready or not. We carry the pods with us and finish the life support work on the ship. Dr. Okafor stared at him. The pods weigh tons. The corridors are too narrow, and if we lose power to their systems during transport, then we better work fast and not lose power, Webb replied. Unless you have a better idea? Nobody did. The station shook again, more violently this time, and debris started falling from the ceiling. All right, Captain Chen decided. We do this the hard way. Prep the pods for emergency transport. We're leaving now, whether they're ready or not. The hardest part of the mission was about to begin. 25 minutes later, the human team was running through the collapsing station, carrying 3 predecessor pods that were never meant to be moved. The pods were heavy, awkward, and connected to a maze of cables and life support equipment that Webb had somehow made portable. This is insane, Dr. Kim panted as she helped carry the portable power unit that was keeping the first predecessor alive. We're basically performing surgery while running a marathon. Welcome to human problem solving, Captain Chen replied, checking her scanner as they navigated the twisting corridors. When normal methods don't work, we try abnormal methods. The station was falling apart around them. Gravity fields flickered on and off, making the heavy pods suddenly weightless, one moment and crushing the next. Ceiling panels crashed down, and the lights failed in sections, leaving them to navigate by the glow of their emergency lanterns. Webb's improvised life support system was holding together, barely. He had connected the 3 pods to a series of portable power cells and medical monitors that beeped constantly as they bounced along the corridors. The whole setup looked like something a mad scientist would build, but it was keeping the predecessors alive. How are their vital signs? Captain Chen asked. Stable, but not great, Dr. Okafor reported, checking his tablet while running. This kind of transport was definitely not what their pods were designed for. Can they survive it? Ask me again when we get them to the ship. The team reached the docking bay just as another major system failed somewhere in the station. The lights went out completely, leaving them in darkness except for their emergency beacons. But they could see the Indomitable waiting for them, its cargo bay doors open and ready. Torres, fire up the engines, Captain Chen ordered over the radio. We need to be ready to leave the moment we get these pods secured. Already warmed up and ready to go, Torres replied. But Chen, we have a problem. The radiation field outside is spiking. If we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, we're not leaving at all. How bad is it? Bad enough that even our crazy plan to fly through it won't work. The radiation levels are climbing toward lethal even during the weakest part of the cycle. The team got the pods into the ship's cargo bay and started securing them for transport. Webb's life support equipment was connected to the ship's power systems, giving them more stable energy for the predecessor's needs. But there was no time to do things properly. They were essentially holding everything together, with cables, emergency patches, and hope. All pods secured, Webb reported. Life support is stable for now, but I wouldn't want to do any sharp turns. Captain Chen made her way to the bridge, where Torres was studying the radiation readings with a grim expression. Outside the ship, the deadly energy field was growing brighter and more intense by the minute. Give me the bad news, Chen said. The radiation field will cook us in about 20 seconds, even with our shields at maximum, Torres explained. Our original plan was to slip through during the weak part of the cycle, but there is no weak part anymore. It's all lethal. So what are our options? We wait 6 hours for the field to cycle down and hope the station doesn't collapse on us. Or, Torres grinned, and it was not a reassuring expression. Or we go really, really fast. Dr. Okafor had joined them on the bridge, and he looked at the radiation readings with horror. Those levels would kill us instantly. Our shields can't handle that much energy. Our shields can't handle it for long, Torres corrected. But they might hold for 30 or 40 seconds if we boost power and pray to whatever gods watch over. Crazy pilots. And how long would it take to get clear of the radiation field? At maximum acceleration with the engines pushed past every safety limit we have, maybe 35 seconds. Captain Chen looked at the numbers, then at her crew. So we need our shields to hold for 35 seconds, but they'll only last 30 or 40 seconds under those conditions. It'll be close, Torres admitted. Really close. Webb's voice came over the intercom from the cargo bay. Did someone say we need to push the engines past safety limits? Because I can definitely help with that. Webb, what are you thinking? I'm thinking we remove every safety protocol, disable every automatic shutdown, and run the engines at 150% power until they either get us out of here or explode. What are the chances they'll explode? Pretty good. But the chances of us dying from radiation poisoning are pretty much guaranteed if we don't try. Captain Chen made the decision that would later be studied in military academies and used as an example of either brilliant leadership or complete insanity. Do it. Remove the safety limits. Torres, plot the fastest course out of the radiation field. Everyone else, secure for emergency acceleration. The alien observer ships watched from their distant positions as the human vessel began its desperate escape attempt. Admiral Zethkara's instruments showed radiation levels that should have been impossible for any ship to survive. They're really going to try it, her science officer said in amazement. Their ship will be destroyed in seconds, the Altarian delegate protested. The radiation levels are beyond anything our shields could handle. Admiral Zethkara watched the human ship begin to move, accelerating toward the deadly energy barrier at speeds that made her tentacles writhe with anxiety. They know that, she said quietly. They're doing it anyway. The Indomitable hit the radiation field like a missile. Instantly, every alarm on the ship started screaming as the deadly energy hammered their shields. The bridge lights flickered as power was diverted to keep their protection systems running. Shields holding at 70%, Torres reported, her voice tight with concentration as she pushed the ship harder than it had ever been pushed before. Hull temperature rising fast, Webb added from engineering. We're starting to cook, but the engines are still running. The ship raced through the radiation field as their shields gradually failed around them. Sparks flew from control panels as systems overloaded. The lights dimmed as power was redirected to keep the engines running at their impossible pace. Shields down to 40%, Torres called out. 20 seconds to clear the field. Engine temperature in the red zone, Webb reported. If we don't get out of here soon, the whole ship is going to melt. In the cargo bay, the predecessor pods were somehow still stable despite the violence of their escape. Webb's improvised life support system sparked and smoked, but it kept working. Shields down to 20%, Torres announced. 10 seconds to safety. Hull breach on Deck 3, Dr. Okafor reported. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but barely. 5 seconds. Torres counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1. The Indomitable burst out of the radiation field like a cork from a bottle, trailing atmosphere and debris, but intact. Behind them, the predecessor station finally collapsed in on itself, becoming a brief star that outshone the local sun before fading to nothing. All stop, Captain Chen ordered. Damage report. Engines are fried, shields are gone, and we have hull breaches on 3 decks, Webb reported. But we're alive, and the ship will hold together long enough to get us home. What about our passengers? Dr. Okafor checked his instruments, hardly believing what he was seeing. All 3 predecessors are stable. Somehow your crazy life support system held together through all of that. Captain Chen activated the radio to contact the alien observer fleet. Admiral Zethkara, this is Captain Chen. Mission accomplished. We have 3 predecessor survivors aboard and are ready for pickup. There was a long pause before the Admiral replied. Captain Chen, how did you survive that radiation field? Our instruments showed levels that should have destroyed any known ship. Chen looked around at her battered bridge, at her exhausted crew, and at the jury-rigged systems that had somehow carried them through an impossible mission. We did what humans always do, Admiral. We took a problem everyone said couldn't be solved, ignored the parts we couldn't change, and fixed the parts we could. But the radiation levels were irrelevant, Chen finished. We didn't need to survive them forever. We just needed to survive them long enough. The predecessor survivors would eventually wake up in a galaxy they no longer recognized, saved by a species that had not even existed when they first went to sleep. When they asked how such a young race had succeeded where ancient civilizations had failed, the answer would become part of galactic legend. Every other species calculated the odds and walked away, the lead predecessor would later say. Humans calculated the odds and decided they didn't matter. Perhaps true wisdom is not always knowing when something is impossible. Perhaps sometimes it is refusing to accept that impossibility should stop you from trying. The rescue mission established humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy as the species to call when a job was too dangerous, too crazy, or too impossible for anyone else to handle. The Galactic Council would eventually create an official category for such missions. Human problems. It was considered the highest compliment the galaxy could give. Years later, when other species asked humans how they had pulled off such an impossible rescue, the answer was always the same. Someone needed help. We helped them. Everything else was just details. To be